Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to the Morning Devo with Bo. Glad to see you guys in the house already, ready to go. Get in the Devo, get in the Word, and enjoy some time there before we get our day really going and up and rolling. And who knows what you're doing? You might be getting ready to bake a little bit. That's a big thing right now. People are baking away and kind of getting stuff ready for the family maybe coming by or the holiday or maybe for a friend, baking a little something to encourage them and lift them up and things like that. You know, there's people in this world that don't know how to bake too well, and I'm one of them. I'm not a good baker, and so it's always neat when someone bakes something super cool because I'm always like, wow, dude, that's awesome. And it totally is a blessing, So, hey, if you're a baker out there, you just, man, go for it. Just bless people's socks off. Hey, you can always check out the archives of the Devo at my YouTube channel, Bo Willette. So if you go to Bo Willette, you'll find on YouTube a lot of archives of the Devos. So we want to be praying for Jesus. He has a liver doctor appointment this morning. So we definitely want to put him in some prayer. And we want to say, hey, what's up to Laura Walker? And she says, good morning, Jesus. Amen. And he says, good morning, Laura, man. The Lord lives to intercede for us, the Bible says. How cool is that? He lives to intercede for us. I love that. Good morning, Marcia. Hope you're doing good too and enjoying life and things are going good in your world. Um, and continue. My mom's in the house, Dot Shackford. Hello, Mama. And we're excited to have some Christmas time together. That's going to be great. And so, yeah, it's a good time of year. Now, this chapter right here, chapter 38, that's where we're at in the devotion. I don't think there's ever been a devotion in this chapter ever. Again, we do devos on every chapter of the Bible. That's pretty radical, man. I don't see that in anything. Oswald Chambers, Utmost for His Highest, Greg Laurie, devotion, you name it. I don't think I've seen any devotion in Genesis 38 ever, but yet this chapter has is the this is the one chapter that actually catapulted me to want to read the entire Bible and moved me into an amazing paradigm shift um, as far as God goes. And I'll kind of explain. You might think, man, how did that happen in this chapter? Well, sometimes the Bible speaks in ways that is so real and so relevant to exposing, reflecting our own fallen nature that um, it actually affirms a doctrinal truth in our life, and that doctrinal truth is that it's called the depravity of human beings, meaning there is something wrong with us. We have a sinful nature that needs to be changed. Something is wrong with us, meaning there's a separation between us and any deity, any God, if there is a God, that we are definitely separated from them because of our sins, and and there is a bent towards refusing to do what God would ever demand of us, or would want of us, or would require of us. Um, and and all through growing up, you always tend to think like, "Oh, I'm good," and you like this natural pride in us that thinks, "Hey, I'm self-sufficient," and all these things like I can do it on my own. And then there's these moments in life where you realize you can't do it on your own, and you realize that you are impotent, and that you are at a loss, and that you don't have it together intellectually, and that you don't know everything you thought you knew. And then you come to a place where you know you need saving because there is nothing good in you. You realize that there is nothing good. And the Bible teaches this utter depravity where it says there's no one righteous, no, not one. Um, each of us humans go our own way, and that's the teaching of the scriptures. And so, man, it's just a radical teaching, because it confirms not only what we see in the scientific observation of human beings, meaning we always see humans going the wrong direction. Even though we try to do the right thing, we always tend to mess up, and something's always a little off, and something we can't seem to get it totally right. But it also puts an aching and longing in our hearts for something greater and something better. And we see this all the time when someone passes away. We go, man, we know they're in a better place. And so many people say that, oh, it's better now. They're at peace now. We're always longing, even if you don't even believe in God, people say that because they're longing. There's something in them that's longing for something perfect. Why? Because they have a clear understanding that something's not perfect. And so there's always this understanding of our need. And this passage certainly hit me in my own culture in Southern California like a rock came and just popped me right in the face. It says, now about that time Judah left home and moved to Adullam. And so Judah was one of the older brothers of Jacob, or older brothers of Joseph, sorry. And remember, they didn't like Joseph too much, right? They sold him off. And we kind of got word that he is now was sold to be a part of the servant slave hood of Egypt. But his Joseph's older brother, one of his older brothers, Judah, leaves home, and he stays with a man named Hirah. There he saw a Canaanite woman, the daughter of Shua, and he married her. And he slept with her, and she became pregnant and gave birth to a son and named the boy Then she became pregnant again and gave birth to another son and named him Onan. And when she gave birth to a third son, she named him Shelah. And at the time of Shelah's birth, they were living at Kezib. So it's a little family history here of Judah and this Canaanite lady. But I want you to see something really cool. He leaves home. He moves away from his home. The idea is he moves away from his dad. He moves away from the place, the farm, the place where, he helps out the dad. Now, what is in Judah's heart at this moment? Super guilty. Why? Because they just sold their youngest brother, or one of their second to the youngest brother, off. Sold him as a slave, man. Could you imagine taking your own brother, your own sister, and beating them up a little bit, and then when people are coming by to buy people in a worldwide slave trade, which took place, the world has always known slavery. Always. There's not been a time on the planet where there hasn't been slavery. Still to this day, there's still people that are slaves and coerced and forced into doing things. They have no rights. There are people like that even today. It's super sad, right? It's a worldwide human problem. And here they sell their brother off into this area, into slavery. So guilt is racking this dude. Now, how do you deal with your guilt? This guy, what Judah does is goes, I don't even want to be around my dad. If I see my dad, I can't even look at my dad in the face probably. Because if I look at my dad in the face, then I see my younger brother who I sold off. And a lot of times guilt moves us in these directions, right? So he moves away from his dad to deal with all of the stuff in his heart. Now, what could have been the right thing to do is just to say, hey, Pop, guess what I did? I was with the other brothers. I wanted to, they wanted to kill him. I said no. We did this thing and we ended up selling him. And by the way, we don't know where he's at. That kind of thing. And just kind of confessed it all. But he didn't. Instead, when you have the unconfessed sin in life, you just you try to cover it up. And you know what's funny is now instead of listening to his dad, he's going to listen to himself. So it's not that we don't, people are trying to always to get rid of some kind of authority figure, right? You get rid of God in your life. You say, "Oh, you go to college." You say, "Oh, I finally figured it out. There is no God." How do I know? Because that guy told me, that professor guy, and he's got a piece of paper and he told me there's no God, so there must not be a God. And now you, instead of listening to God, now you're listening to humans. And now humans are dictating your world and your life and what you think and what you believe and all that. It's all coming from fellow human beings that you could see that are before you. And that's what Judah does. He trusts him. He trusts maybe his friend named Hirah, but he marries these women. And in the course of time, Judah arranged for his firstborn son to marry a young woman named Tamar. But was a wicked man in the Lord's sight, so the Lord took his life. Wow. It doesn't say much else other than he was wicked. Now, he had to be pretty seriously wicked. And the reason why I say that is because there was some kind of divine intervention into this person's life or maybe he just died and the writer is writing from the perspective of kind of God's providence or God's sovereignty, that he died and it was as if God took his life. I mean, the Lord said that, and every death is something where the Lord takes. It's the idea in the book of Job. God gives and takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord, right? That kind of idea of God's sovereign hand in this person life or in our life. So when we die, we might say, "Oh, well, I died of this cause." Well, from a spiritual perspective, the Lord took your life. God knows when you're going to die. God is the sovereign Lord of everything. He is the creator. He is the divine logos, the divine word. And so we could just think of it that way, that he died. And it says, then Judah said to Er's brother Onan, "Go and marry Tamar, as our law requires of the brother of a man who has died." And now, so what happens is, it says, you must produce an heir for your brother. Now, this sounds a little weird. If I remember, it was called the Levirate Law. And it was a law that said, hey, if your brother did die, then it's your duty to go into your brother's wife and to produce offspring so that they're in a sense, descendants continue and they have progeny. And it was actually an honorable thing to do, to give your brother's spouse a child. And isn't that cool how important children were seen, how important kids were. And even the understanding of a woman's biology was super vital. They saw women as pretty important, man, because they could have children and men couldn't. And so here we go with this Levirate law. To produce an heir for your brother. Your brother has an inheritance from the dad, and he, that trickles down from grandpa to father to son. And your brother's passed away, so you produce an heir for your brother, so that those kids become the heirs of everything that was supposed to be given to your brother. So that kind of idea really continues to grow the family, and says, but Onan was not willing to have a child who would not be his heir. And this is like a lot of us growing up, where we become rebellious and stubborn, and we are not willing. It's not that we don't intellectually, or let me put it this way. It's not that my denial of God was not an intellectual denial, but it was a really heartfelt will. I did not want to. Even if someone said something that seemed really true. Meaning if someone said, hey, it seems like the world is designed a certain way for life to function. It just seems very like everything is fine-tuned, like the sun is exactly where it's supposed to be. The moon is where it's exactly supposed to be. We are the third rock from the sun, as the great Twilight Zone put it, right? The great Rod Serling. Back in the late 50s, 60s, the show, he had one of his Twilight Zones called The Third Rock from the Sun. This amazing place, this rock that was a perfect place when it came to its orbit around the sun. And life is produced, and everything in our body, the cells and the way things move, and the nanotechnology that's in us, that's moving around, and it's got information going everywhere. And people are telling there's all kinds of little cells in our body that are telling other cells what to do all the time. They're always going, hey, do this, do that, do replicate, don't kill that, don't kill that, hey, let's go over there, hey, go, all these fine-tuning things going on. Even if someone told me that, and I said, man, you know what, you're right. Instead of saying you're right, like that sounds right, let me look into that some more, I was just not willing to go that direction. So Onan becomes a picture of stubbornness. Onan becomes a picture of extreme stubbornness. The father says to do something, to bless his brother, in a sense the progeny of his brother, to bless his brother's wife with a child, something that to continue on the family, something that seems so beautiful. And so things don't just stop. There isn't an extinction of them. That the name continues. The memory keeps going. And Onan becomes unwilling, stubborn, right? Kind of like his old man, Judah, who has become stubborn in his own life, the way he treated his brother, right? Judah didn't treat his brother Joseph that good, and now Onan's not treating his brother that good, right? The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, right? Even though Judah leaves his dad and says, hey, I'm going to go do my own thing, it doesn't work. He just becomes stubborn like everybody else. Like he becomes a stubborn person. He becomes bitter and bummed, and he can't deal with it. He's trying to deal with his guilt, but it's not working. Now he has kids of his own, and he sees the same behavior that he had in his kids. Same exact thing. Have you ever noticed that as a parent, where you look at your kid and you go, whoa, man, same stubbornness, same attitude, gosh, he looks it reminds me of me, that kind of idea. And so Onan is this big picture, this big ball of stubbornness, not willing. What is preventing you from looking into the person of Jesus Christ? Is it really intellectual? Are you really looking at the intellectual arguments against who Jesus is and who he claimed to be? Or are you just not willing? Is it just your stubborn heart? And this is what I had to come to grips to in this passage, is that I found it was just my stubborn heart. So whenever he had intercourse with his brother's wife, he spilled his semen on the ground. This prevented her from having a child who would belong to his brother. But the Lord considered it evil for Onan to deny a child to his dead brother. So the Lord took Onan's life too. So Onan dies as well, as a judgment for not doing this. And now Judah is an important person in our Bible. Now, for all you Bob Marley fans out there, we grow up listening. When you grow up listening to reggae music, and you listen to Bob Marley especially, you learn about Jesus through reggae music. And reggae music talks about the Lion of the tribe of Judah. Yeah, that's a name for Jesus, by the way. The Lion of the tribe of Judah, taken from the book of Revelation, concerning Jesus, this guy from Nazareth. Jesus is the Lion of the tribe of Judah. Now, it tells us something about Jesus in that title, and that is he is from the line of Judah. Hold that thought. He is from Judah becomes vital in the narrative in Genesis. Very important. Why is this in our Bible? Because there is a lineage of Judah that is being told, because it's an important one. And it's one that helps us understand grace and mercy in light of our Onan, our stubbornness, right? He's supposed to go into his brother's wife. He certainly goes into her, right? He becomes intimate with her, but he just will not do what he's supposed to do. He just becomes stubborn. He's living for what? Self, right? He becomes a picture of narcissism. I want to do things my way, right? When you're not really doing things your way, you might be, acting on your impulses at the moment, but really you're trusting someone else. You just move from one person to another instead of trusting your dad and doing what your dad told you to do and see the blessings of it. Instead, you've moved to your own will or to listening to someone else. Maybe Onan's friends said, hey, dude, don't listen to your dad. Your dad's a dweeb, that kind of thing, and Onan does not do it. Again, he just follows. It's like the blind leading the blind, man. He's just kind of doing his own narcissistic thing, right? And then he passes away, he dies. Now, this kind of narcissism was something that I grew up around, just because in Southern California, you're growing up in a highly materialistic culture, like on steroids. So it's a materialistic culture times 20, times 100. Everything is material. You are living in a material world. That's exactly how it goes. And it wasn't like, growing up like in a place that's out in the sticks where you had to shovel snow, or you had to get things kind of together and you had to work the farm and you had to do this. It wasn't like that. You got on your skateboard and you got on your bike and you cruised down the road and you had a paper route and you did that, and then you went to your friends and then you hung out there and then you played video games and you went to the roller rink, then you played your guitar and then you played your music and then you skated some more, and then it was just very, you do what you want to do and experience the self, life. And a lot of us grow up out there in that way. And not everybody, but a lot of us do get caught up in that an incredible entertainment narcissistic life where you think you have everything, when really you don't know that you're wretched, poor, blind, and that you are so in need, but your entertainment world has just blocked out everything. You have done everything you wanted to do. You have done your own thing, not thinking about the large picture, not thinking about others per se. It's just been really about you and what you want to do. And so here we see, this incredible narcissism of Onan taking place. So sad, right? I always think in a Devo, God, help me not to be so like this. Help me not to be so stubborn. But notice there's an amazing grace in this, because God does use Judah, even though Judah is so flawed and his family is so flawed. We know Jesus' line is going to come from Judah. It's pretty amazing. Now look at how this happens. Then Judah said to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, go back to your parents' home and remain a widow until my son, Shelah, is old enough to marry you. Sad, right? Third son. We're on number 3. But Judah didn't really intend to do this because she was afraid Shelah would also die like his 2 brothers. So Tamar went back to live in her father's home. Did Tamar think something was wrong with her? Maybe, right? And maybe the actions of Judah and the actions of of his sons affected Tamar. And what is the effects that I've had on young people on in my growing up years especially? How did I influence people? And that really impacted my heart too in this chapter. Reading it when I was 17 years old. How Tamar was affected by these dudes. How did I affect young girls in my day? You know, did I hurt them? What was that? So you could see the conviction starting to creep up in my mind at 17. And then it says, some years later, Judah's wife dies. Now he marries a Canaanite woman, which wasn't the best idea. We could go into that, but I won't. But he doesn't marry in the family. He marries outside. And it says, after the time of mourning was over, Judah and his friend Hirah, the Adulamite, went up to Timnah to supervise the shearing of the sheep. Someone told Tamar, look, your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear the sheep. Tamar, who loses all confidence in Judah and Judah's sons at this point, any male authority in her life has definitely let her down. Tamar was aware that Shelah had grown up, but no arrangements had been made for her to come and marry him. So Judah was withholding his third son from being with Tamar. And so Tamar is this desperate woman who's going to be married, marriageless, if you will, without children in this society. Not a great place to be in. And so she changed out of her widow's clothing and covered herself with a veil to disguise herself. Then she sat beside the road and, amazing, right? Into the entrance of the village of Enaim, which is on the road to Timnah. I love the Bible. It's so specific on its places, right? Judah noticed her and thought she was a prostitute since she had covered her face. It was a cultural kind of clothing that you wear. The style that was there. It's not no different from when I was young and cruising, by Hollywood and Vine, and then you see the way people are dressed. You know what's going down, right? And here she's dressed up in this place, and right? Why is she dressed up in this place? Because the way the males in her life acted, in a sense, pushed her. Now, she made a decision to do this, but it was out of desperation. It was out of desperation, right? She was desperate. In a sense, her socio-economic world was now contingent on what she does at this moment. Is she going to remain barren and without a child and not married? Or what is she going to do? Well, she takes, out of this desperation, she goes this direction. And we see her take the clothing of a prostitute. And so she stops and he propositioned her. Let me have sex with you, he said, not realizing that she was his own daughter-in-law. How much will you pay to have sex with me? Tamar asked. I will send you a young goat from my flock, Judah promised. But what will you give me to guarantee that you will send the goat? She asked. What kind of guarantee do you want? He replied. And she answered, leave me your identification seal, its cord, and the walking stick you're carrying. So Judah gave her, and then he had intercourse with her, and she became pregnant. After she went home, took off her veil, and put on her widow's clothing as usual. So you see her place in society. She has clothes that show that she is a widow. You might be down and out, and I might be down and out. And, Jesus has come for the sick, for those that are in need. And, he says, come to me, all who are heavy laden, heavy burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, for it is easy, it is light. come take from me, because if you try to trust in other things in this world or other people or your own intuitions, man, it's just going to lay heavy burdens, and you're just going to be filled with guilt and filled with shame and all these things. Come to me. Jesus is a good master, because you're going to serve someone, as the great Bob Dylan once said, right? You're going to serve somebody. Oh man, what a story of just male issues, right? So many, not just male, there's female issues going on here too, but man, Judah, what is he doing? His wife dies, and you see him buying a prostitute. You see him buying a prostitute. And boy, is that the story of a lot of our lives, where we become these things that we never thought we would become. We think we're so this, but really we have stooped so low in our life. The way we've made our money, the way we've done things. I mean, we can pick apart so many parts of lives and see injustice and issues and blah, 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 and all these things. And it's a story of how men have really reflected in the lives of women also in this chapter. Not good, right? Men haven't treated women that great. But I want you to see something. Judah gets found out, and Tamar, remember, takes some of his stuff as payment. And Tamar at some point exposes to the family that, hey, Judah had sex with me. And I'm going to have a baby. And so it all gets exposed. And Judah says, hey, you know what? This Tamar is more righteous than I. Judah has this confessional moment in the chapter. It's super sweet, this little sentence where he says, hey, she's done better than me. I've been wrong. He realizes the injustice of holding back his third son from her, keeping her in this place of widowhood. And that he knows he's forced her hand. He hasn't dealt with her right. And he knows that he shouldn't have been with her in this kind of way. That he shouldn't have, hey, in his travels, in my travels, I'm going to go get a prostitute. He shouldn't have been like that, And he sees, his own yuck. He sees his own sin, as she speaks to the family in the rest of the chapter. And then, and he says, she is more righteous than I, because I didn't arrange the marriage between Shelah and her. And it says, Judah never slept with Tamar again. Never again did he have intimacy with her. But then Tamar gives birth, and it's discovered that she's carrying twins. While she was in labor, one of the babies reached out his hand. The midwife grabbed it and tied a scarlet string around the child's wrist, announcing this one came out first. But then he pulled back his hand, and out came his brother. What? The midwife exclaimed. How did you break out first? So he was named Perez, and the baby with the scarlet string on his wrist was born, and his name was Zerah. Now, the reason why I find that so fascinating is because, here you have these kids that are born. One's called Breaking Out, and one's called Brightness, which is kind of neat. Brightness, like a newness, right? Well, Judah's line now continues, and we're going to see that Judah's line will continue through Perez. And through Judah will come a man named Boaz. And then through Boaz will come a man named King David. Whoa! Yes, King David is from this line. And from that line will come other people down the line all the way to Jesus. All the way, Jesus is from Tamar. Is that amazing in your mind? See, it's a picture of grace too. What a reflection of our yuck in this chapter. Once again, the narrative that shows us that, wow, human behavior hasn't changed much over the years. where I thought the Bible was just a fairy tale. I thought the Bible was just this made up book, just kind of this, hey, once upon a time in a galaxy far, far and away, there lived an angel, that kind of thing. And then I read this chapter and I went, oh my gosh, this is just like today. This is just like our lives today. Just filled with self and stubbornness and then to see that there's this newness of life that's happening through Tamar, and then learning that Jesus is coming from the line of Tamar, makes me just think, wow, what a trip. What a blessing. How amazing is God. His grace, his mercy. Man, Jesus doesn't come through a line of perfection. He comes through a line of issues, of a lot of mistakes. The King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, the creator of the universe, the incarnation, right, takes on a human body from what line? This line. From Perez. From breaking out. And, oh man, there's lessons learned too from Judah, right? He doesn't have intimacy with her again. There's some lessons learned. Judah's learning some lessons here. He's seeing himself. He's seeing his own selfishness, his own ways, his own, just as Tamar acts in her way to get what she needs in desperation, and the sons of Judah are in their narcissistic, attitudes and behaviors. Judah is seeing reflections of his own stubbornness to sell his own son off or his own brother off into slavery. So you see that sometimes, we see things, and man, again, we see things we don't like in people. We look at people and we hate what they're doing, and a lot of times it's a mirror, it's a reflection, it's a mirror image of our own humanity as well. We see the depth of our own depravity within other humans, and it's scary, and it makes us a little nervous because we see it in us. And if you don't see it in us, well, that might be the most narcissistic and sociopathic, thing that's happening to us, is that we become unaware of just the depths that we can go to of depravity. And we start enjoying our evil work. We start thinking our evil work's good. But hey, that's another story. We'll get into that another day. But anyway, what a chapter, man. Again, this chapter was my chapter, man. I read this chapter. I shared this with every Christian I knew. This chapter was the one I shared at high school. Every Christian I could find, I would try to talk to them about this chapter because it floored me. Wow. It was definitely hit me as a Southern California boy, that's for sure. Thank you for the incarnation, God. Thank you that you show that you are willing to have mercy on us, that you came in this line, and that you love us, and that you can do great work in our life too. Help us to be honest and real with what goes on in our hearts and in our minds and in our lives, and help us to deal with our guilt properly by bringing things before the cross, remembering our guilt has been taken away from us by Jesus. So you guys take care, okay? Bye-bye.